Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting for March 20th, 2024. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, folks. My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who is our third member. Over on the side table, we have Wendy McKenna, who is our solicitor, and we have John Everett, who is our township engineer. On the back table, we have Sean Halbum, who's our township manager, and we have Christian Jones, who is our new assistant township manager. Does anybody have any informational items for the board this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this meeting is being video recorded for future broadcast.
Thank you, Sean. I also would like to report that the board met in an executive session on February 29th to discuss personnel. There will be no decisions on that matter tonight. Additionally, informationally, I just want to share that on behalf of the Township and the Board of Supervisors, I had the opportunity to participate in the Variety Club's ribbon cutting last week for their new dorm. It was well attended. We had good representation, and they were very complimentary to the township and all the assistance that we've been able to provide for them. First and foremost is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Chris? If we ask you to come forward and sure. And if you just make sure the green light is glowing, pull that towards you. Start with an introduction. We know who you are, but just for the recording and get all the information, and then the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening. My name is Christopher DePaul. I'm the property owner of Asakar Group and Whitehall Farms, located at 1616 Whitehall Road. I wanted to follow up per our last meeting that I had and that I came to the board. I had a couple questions that I asked, and I just wanted to see if there was any follow-up on that, which will take us into our next couple questions and statements I'd like to make. So in reference to what I had sent before is I was issued a permit by Sean. I was doing the work. He came down, had stopped us, and said we didn't have a permit. At that point, I had told him we did have a permit. He said he was going back to his office to check. He came back on the property. This was January 24th with Frank Armstrong from CKS Engineers stating I didn't have a permit to do the work I was doing. At that point, I called my office. I had to text him a copy of the permit that he was the one that was issuing, okay, which was concerning to me that I have to send him a copy of the permit that he was saying, I issued the permits and you don't have a permit, okay? So at that point, there's where we stand, and yes, there was a couple items and concerns for the work I was doing. I'm not gonna say that there is an issue, but it has nothing to do with how we got to this moment right now, okay? That could have been taken care of, and it's in the process. Mr. Robert Blue will be sending that over. I just wanted to make sure if I have to do any other revisions when I submit my plans again, that I'm doing it the right way and making sure that I don't have to change it around, because I still don't know if I really had a permit, because the information on the permit pertained to Pulte Homes and DePaul and Company. So I just want to make sure we're 100% and kind of put it past us.
Sure. So you had a permit. So let me share, and then you did have a permit. The permit was revoked when the site visit took place in January, and the additional work was seen being done, which had not been documented on the permit application. So there was some addition, as you said, there was some additional work that was discovered that was being done. They said the permit that had been issued did not cover those items. So my understanding, and again, there have been a lot of emails and conversations that have taken place, of course, over the last few weeks, is that revised plans that were going to entail all of the work that was being done were either done or just about done being reproduced by your engineer to share with our engineer, John, so that they can then evaluate all of the work so that they can make sure you have a permit that aligns to the work that you're doing. And then if there is any additional, I know there was a conversation about a PennDOT driveway. Again, I'm not an expert
Yes.
on those things.
John had helped out.
Part of that process is us making sure we have a full and complete set of plans to what's being done so that then they can make the assessment as to this is the appropriate permit to have for that, or if there's additional requirements to that. That process. So yes, there was a permit. The permit was specifically revoked so that an appropriate permit can be aligned to the work that's actually being done.
So
That makes sense.
yes, I hear. I just want to be clear and be sure I'm on the record here, that the permit that he told me when he came there, that I had no permit because he didn't look at what I was doing. He yelled and said, "You don't have a permit, you shouldn't be doing this." Okay, well, that was, I was grading dirt in the area where I did have a permit for, okay? So I just want to be clear that you can't revoke a permit that you're telling me I never had. And then all of a sudden you tell me I have it, and then you revoke something, and I ask you. But we're going to move on from that because I hear you, and we're going to submit that.
Sure.
So after that, the next day, amazingly, I receive a letter from Sean on the 22nd, stating I'm in violation, which I've sent to the board, and everyone has received these emails, okay, that I'm in violation of having construction equipment on my property, and I'm in violation of this, which doesn't reference where I'm in violation of, but I can't have construction equipment on my property, okay? So I just want to know where in the zoning that I can't have construction equipment on my property, okay?
So
You know what I'm saying is when you have someone coming out, the next day I get this letter conveniently referencing January 24th, the same day that I was stopped, revoked my permit and stopped on the site. But it didn't happen until the next day that I come and speak up.
Sure. So what took place, Chris, is when they were on the site visit on the 24th, they saw and observed all of the equipment that they saw. So within the zoning, you are an agricultural use at that property, and a construction use isn't an allowable use at that property. They noted the information on the 24th, which is why the next day you got a violation letter saying you cannot have a construction use at this site. Now let me finish, and then let me finish on that. That's why you received that particular violation notice within 24 hours of them being on site. It was not a reciprocal action. They were there on the 24th. They noted all of the equipment that was there. They made a determination, both the zoning officer, which is Sean, and the engineer, who was there, which was Frank, made a determination, both of them, that the volume of equipment that was in place represented a construction use, which is not an allowable use. Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, sharing the information with you, that's not an allowable use. The remedy for that, just so you understand, we as a board, we don't make zoning determinations. Ultimately, if you say, I don't agree with you on that particular assessment, the remedy is to go before the zoning board in order to state your case as to why it is an allowable use. So saying whatever, I know we talked about it a little bit when you and I spoke about, does it fall under agriculture? We ultimately can't say yes or no to that. We don't have the authority to do that. Ultimately, our engineer and our zoning officer are within their right to make a zoning determination based on what they visually observe, and then you can say, well, no, I don't agree with that, and certainly Wendy, our solicitor, who's more versed on these matters than I, can share some additional comments as well. But ultimately, then you would go before the zoning board and you would say, this is what I have, this is why I have it, here's why it falls under the acceptable use. That's sort of that is the process that follows.
Okay, I'd just like to clear something here. On January 24th, okay, that's when he revoked the permit. February 22nd is when he issued this other violation, not the day after.
Okay.
February 21st,
okay.
we were here in this meeting, then conveniently,
Okay.
the 22nd, I get this letter referring to the 24th. So it took almost a month for him to come up with this thing that he said that you
My
said it was
apologies.
the
I
next
have
day.
I have the wrong date on that.
But that's very important. That's crucial because I feel I'm being harassed now. Okay, so I'm just gonna continue.
Fair enough.
I also want to be clear: is you're saying construction company, I'm saying construction equipment, and
I'm saying construction use. That's the term.
construction. But who's to say that I can't have a piece of construction, farming, army, military piece of equipment on my property? That needs to be clarified because you're issuing violations, saying people can't have these things on their property, as I sent in my email to the board.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think that's wrong. You're accusing me of something that I am not doing, and you're saying you're wrong.
So
If you have an issue that you want to ask, I'm open, and even if I disagree with you, I'm open to hear you. But you're making statements, Sean, and issuing violations to people, and they're guilty, and you have no basis for it. So that's it. So I don't want to, I only have 5 minutes, but excuse me, I just want to make sure then on March 4th, for no odd reason, and I'm typing an email to ask the board if there was any decision made. That morning at 9:10, Sean pulls up to our property, okay, decides to go out without permission, go on our property, not even announce he's there, and our property is posted clearly, do not enter, please call. Mr. Frank Armstrong, when he came onto our property, please call, and he did call it, as I mentioned before.
Sure.
Not a problem. He did. Frank, go on, do whatever you have to do. Okay? Not an issue. He pulled up, or just went directly down there, not even checked in. There was no emergency. There was no issue. What gives him the right to come on your property and do what he wants to do when there is no emergency or anything? This is clearly harassment, and he's coming and targeting me. And I'm very
Chris?
frustrated and aggravated that I have to sit here and justify why I have equipment on my property, and he's going to come down and make statements that I can't have construction or any equipment on my property.
So there's a couple things there, Chris. First off, I appreciate your comments. I understand what you're saying. You're not being harassed. I know.
He's coming on your property, not even announcing it. How could you say I'm not being harassed? What did I prompt for on the 4th?
Chris, give him a minute, please.
I'm sorry, I'm just...
You're excitable, I get it. Just give him a minute, please.
So the zoning officer and the engineer, if they make a determination, they're entitled to make a determination, okay? I don't set that rule. I don't tell them they can't make a determination. If they make a determination when they're observing the amount of equipment that they saw and the type of equipment they saw, they can make an assessment to that. It's not an accusation. It's saying this is what they've visually observed, which is they determined it's not an allowable use. And then ultimately, I mean, I don't know, Wendy, if you want to add sort of the componentry here. I'm not trying to be...
I'm happy to jump in here and try to
Sure.
clarify what I understand the situation that occurred. So you did receive a notice back on February 22nd that you referenced.
Yes.
My understanding is that notification to you stated that you needed to bring the property into compliance by March the 1st. So on March the 4th, Mr. Halbaum, in his capacity as zoning officer, came back to your property with a representative from the engineer to determine whether or not you had brought the property into compliance. That was the purpose of the visit on March the 4th, and that is within the authority of the township zoning officer. If I can read to you from our zoning ordinance, it states that it shall be the duty of the zoning officer, and he shall have the power to conduct inspections and surveys to determine whether compliance or non-compliance with the terms of this chapter. In carrying out such surveys, the zoning officer or his representative may enter on to any land or building. In addition, there's a resolution that was adopted by this board in April of '22, also with respect to the zoning officer's power to enter onto private property. That says that the building inspector, fire marshal, assistant fire marshal, zoning officer, and assistant zoning officer, when acting in an investigatory or enforcement capacity and in an official scope of duty may access private property without prior notification made to the owner of record of the property. So Mr. Halbum, when he came back to your property on March the 4th, he was doing that in his capacity as zoning officer to determine if you had complied with the notification that was issued to you on February 22nd. Now, I'll continue here because I think it's important that you hear this so you're not leaving here and, again, thinking that you're being harassed, because there is no harassment here. When Mr. Halbum and the representative of CKS returned to your property on March the 4th, they took photos of what they found at the site. What they found at the site was a wide variety of construction equipment, materials, signage, pavers, that in their opinion, as the township engineer and zoning officer, do not fall within the parameters of an agricultural use. So because of that, there has in fact been an additional notice of violation that has been drafted and will be forwarded to you. When you receive that notice, you will have 30 days to file your appeal. If you disagree with the notice, if you disagree with the assessment, if you somehow, it's your position that what you're doing there is appropriate as an agricultural use, then your remedy is to file an appeal to the zoning hearing board. You'll have 30 days to do that from your receipt of that notice. That's not the notice you have in front of you. It's going to, if you haven't received it yet, you'll receive it in the mail in the next few days. It will come by certified mail and regular mail.
Okay.
So that's the process. That's where we are right now with respect to it.
Okay, so the question I just want to be clear is, in here in this letter, it says I have 30 days to appeal on February 22nd, right? So if I had 30 days to appeal and go, so he sets the time frame I have to comply to what I don't think there's a problem, right? Because I choose to have construction equipment there. One of the issues here is I'd like to follow up is there's a failure to discuss and mention that what my plans for the property, as Sean, I opened up on the back of my tailgate, went fully through what I had planned, intended to do. So for him to make the statement that these things aren't needed to do that is false, because he doesn't understand what's involved in doing this, okay? And I would ask Mr. Quigley, you know what type of equipment goes on a farm, and construction equipment is used in preparation of any farm out there, okay, to do that. The machines are the same that you use, okay, in both. I've copied this. Everyone can look at it.
If I can just stop you for a minute. The case that you wish to make isn't the case to be made to this board. This board does not have the authority to overturn a determination of the zoning officer. That has occurred. So at this point, if you wish to make the case that somehow the equipment you have on your property is appropriate as an agricultural use, then that's what you will bring to the zoning hearing board. And they can make that determination.
No, and I understand you.
Where we are, and again, the zoning officer is vested with the power and the authority to interpret and enforce the zoning ordinance.
And I understand that, and I'll be appealing that. But I just want to be clear, I brought this up as a conversation. But just as my follow thing here, on the 4th, March 4th, when Sean showed up again, when you state that I'm not being harassed, there's no intent here. Now, this is what, as I'm typing an email to the board, which they all got a copy of, about just asking and inquiring, at that point, I was stopped. I was given a call. This is from my employees, okay, that said, hey, they'll come in here and speak and put their name online and test, whatever it is, to speak. When Sean was asked, did I have a scheduled meeting with him? He said he spoke with Chris and sent a letter 2 weeks ago. He has never spoken to me. The last time we had contact was on the 21st, the night a month ago, when we spoke. I sent him an email the following day.
Sure.
For things, and so we never spoke. So that is not clear, okay? Stating he was going to come by March 1st for an inspection. I don't know that. He never spoke to me, so I don't know that, okay? And taking photos of the property is what he's in the various violations. Sean would not speak to Chris. He's making this statement to Mr. Ryan Dempsey and Michael Shipman, who work with us, okay? He will stop by every day and looking for violations and be writing everything down and every day looking for violations. Is that what a township manager is supposed to do? Making them statements. That is what he's coming to do. And he said he will no longer speak to me, okay? He will only do it in writing. So if a township manager is coming saying, I'll be coming by every day looking for violations, and you tell me how that is not harassment, okay? How are tax dollars being spent here, okay, for him to come around trying to harass, okay, township residents, okay, and business owners, okay? How is that? That's what I'd like to understand, how that's not harassment.
So,
I'm sorry, it's just, that is harassment.
so he has not been back out, so we as a board, he has not been back out to your site.
Yes, and thank you.
We, as Wendy has explained, the next step is an appeal to the zoning board, and that's where you'll have the opportunity. So first off, we hear everything you're saying. We hear everything that you're saying. There's two tracks here. There's things that we need to internally, as a board, take a look at the process and see how it transpired and see if we need to make changes relative to our process. There's a second track, which is what Wendy was explaining, is saying, as a zoning officer, the determination that gets made, the appeal to that goes to the zoning hearing board so that you can have an opportunity to state your case as to why it's all necessary and appropriate for what you want to do at the site. So what I want to make clear is that we certainly hear what you're saying on the one track in terms of how that process took place, but we also want to make sure that you know your remedy is the action to take the matter to the zoning hearing board so they can make a determination that says, yes, this is appropriate for the use that he's describing or not. This ultimately their determination. We have no role in the, they're separate from us so that we don't, we're not vested with that power as a board of supervisors, but those, certainly we hear what you're saying. We obviously, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to address the matter, but we're also taking internally to make sure we hear everything that you're saying relative to the experience, and we'll deal with that certainly in whatever manner we think makes the most sense as a board. So I do appreciate the comments. I understand it's a frustrating process. We're doing the best we can to sort of get to a remedy here, and hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Okay, so when I appeal this and I'm asking the question is, what I'm saying, why can't I have construction equipment, my own equipment that I own, that if I'm using around my farm to develop it, why I cannot have that on the site? And that's what I'm having a problem understanding, is what am I in violation of?
The amount of construction equipment that was observed on the property exceeds, in the zoning officer's opinion, what would be used in an agricultural use. The zoning officer's opinion is that a construction company or construction storage yard is being conducted on the property.
Okay?
So it will be your burden to go to the zoning hearing board and provide evidence as to why that is not the case.
Okay? So there's no quantity here, it's something subjective.
I haven't been on the site.
No, I'm just asking about it. I'm trying to understand how I have to
I
prepare this.
I would suggest that you may want to seek advice from
We have counsel,
attorney.
we do. I just want to make sure.
I would suggest that you do that. I can't give you legal advice here. Your attorney can review the ordinance, they can review the situation with you, they can review what has been happening on the property, and they can make.
So Wendy, is it appropriate for them to call you? I mean, again, I'm not,
No, it would
No,
not be
okay.
appropriate. You can,
I follow you, and I appreciate it. I'm trying to find it's subjective, because it says what Sean feels is necessary for agricultural use, okay? I don't know Sean's experience in farming, okay, in construction, and I don't have a lot of that, okay, but I have it. I'm just trying to understand what's acceptable, because at that point, it's something subjective to anyone. If Sean leaves tomorrow and someone else comes in, they'll change, they could say, this is acceptable. So I just don't see how that's right. But I get it, I understand. If you're saying this is it, I have no problem, but I don't know how you go about proving something that all this equipment that I have is used to develop a farm. And why can't I use what I have? Why am I limited to what I have on my property if I'm not affecting it?
that's fine.
Not bothering
I
anybody?
really think you need to consult with an attorney and get advice on that topic.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know it's been over 5 minutes. I appreciate it.
I have some,
Anyone else?
Chris, I have,
Yes.
once again, I think you're off the wrong foot with the permit. The permit was issued, you said you didn't have a permit, so we have a problem there. And I've talked before about, I always call it the slippery slope we're on, and I think we're on a very slippery slope. You're privileged to have more equipment than most of us have at your disposal. Some people collect cars, some people collect trucks, some people have access to different things. Your situation is a little bit different, that you have toys. I'll call them toys, and your toys happen to be equipment. A lot of people don't have access. They have maybe a lawnmower or a backhoe or something, but you're privileged to have access to a number of pieces of equipment, agriculture, construction equipment, one way or the other. And as you mentioned before, that, and once again, back to slippery slope, my wife collects copper teapots. She doesn't put them outside, but she keeps them inside. One could say you collect manhole covers. It becomes a spitting match as to understanding where we're coming from and where you're coming from, but you have access to this stuff. And, you know, some people collect antique fire trucks, and they have them on their property. I don't think as a township we've run across this, at least in the 18 years I've been here, where people have things. Now, we do have other construction companies in the township that have a lot of equipment on their property. You can't see it, but it's there. So I think we're in a very precarious situation here when we start looking at it and judging how many tractors you can have. We have 16 tractors on the farm. Is that too many? And right now, due to weather, and I'm sticking up for you, but we have 2 track hoes doing irrigation work and drainage work. They've been there for a month and a half due to the weather. They can't move, so it's weather, it's there. And, you know, we have looking at this, a lot of this stuff's used in the agriculture, the pictures you have, in progressive farms, not the smaller farmers just making hay, but the bigger farms. So we here delineate a 10-acre farm or a 1,000-acre farm, or who most people can't justify a 165 horsepower tractor on their 10-acre farm. You can justify that because you have it, you own it. So that's where it's a tough situation. So I understand the situation with the equipment, and just like we said, when we dig a hole, we dig it with a post hole digger. I don't have access to a big machine. If I had access to a big machine, I'd probably use the thing. You have access to it. So it's a situation that we're not being mean and nasty. It's something that we haven't come across yet. And I don't want to say you're a trailblazer to some extent, but you know, we sold our plow a number of years ago, 15 years ago. For 50, 60 years, my father-in-law used a plow. We don't use a plow anymore. We use other pieces of equipment to till the soil and to work the soil. So I understand where you're coming from, but I think some of our laws have been maybe a little outdated and need to be looked at. But certainly as we sit here, you know, Lou collects cars. And, you know, I don't have 7 or 8 cars. Lou has 7 or 8 cars. So where do we, the township, come and say that you can only have 3 cars? You know, you have the power to have more vehicles and more toys. You're privileged to have that stuff. So it's just a situation that needs to be addressed. And I think, so you understand what Rick says, once that zoning thing happens, our hands are tied. We have to sit there like a lump on a log and just let it play its course. We can't go back and revoke anything. It's the way the laws are set up based on that. So I just want to let you know, I think we're all hearing what you're saying. It's something a little bit different than usually we see. But to your point, I understand the use of your heavy equipment for digging trees, moving trees and things. You have access to it.
have cranes,
Most people can't afford to go to Georgia Tool Rental and buy the piece of equipment rent it for $500 a day. You can let it sit there because it's not costing anything. And to move it back and forth, it's not there. And so the board understands when your job is done, the equipment disappears. It's not going to be a storage yard. I think that's the problem with the township's facing. Not that they're looking for any answers right now. You don't have to give an answer, but the hope is that it's for the purposes of doing what you have to do, then the stuff, it's not going to be a stockyard. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the neighbors are saying with the noise and equipment, it becomes a place where vehicles come and go as they please. So, and I addressed that with you before, a month ago, and he said, no, that's not the case. So, Lou?
I just want to know, what's the definition of construction equipment versus farm equipment? Does it have to be like green or red, or can it be yellow or orange? I mean, John Everett, you are the construction engineering area. I mean, you could define that. Is that discrimination? I mean, can he collect equipment? I mean, there is a case on Valley Forge Road that this gentleman went through with the past township manager, and he was collecting a lot of machining equipment for like a CNC machine, but antique stuff. Back and forth, back and forth. He ended up building a structure to hold it all. I mean, that was a conflict. And again, I think we need to address our maybe terminology a little different. And are you allowed to collect manhole covers? Whatever. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's America. So identifying whether you're running a construction company or not, that's a different story. If stuff's coming and going, yeah, you're running a company. If it's just sitting there because you like to stare at it, that's America. That's free. That's your freedom. You're allowed to buy whatever you want. It's legal. It's yours. So we got to define a little bit of terminology on, without getting in people's backyards all the time, what are you doing? So there was a complaint. He did follow up. I just think we need to clarify maybe our ordinances a little different, maybe, understand them differently.
And I agree, it's not, hey, listen, he's doing his job following up, and I have no problems in the world.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I'm clear is, we are going to be operating a farm. I'm going to develop that to make sure that there's a whole thing, and I sent that plan in, and I'm working with Robert Blue for a big master plan for what this is to look like, and it's a work in progress.
Yep.
It takes a
I do it a
while,
little bit as I have time.
and it takes a while, and it's not overnight, and I understand that.
It's not, so there's a lot, and I need a lot of materials to do this, and
I just think we got to work with you a little bit on giving you some time to get your preparation with Bob Blue or whoever. And I just think, Rick, we just need to work with, maybe our ordinances need to be a little touched up, maybe. Could that be a good statement, or am I going down it wrong?
I don't think you want to go there right now for this.
We're not going to touch this right
Tonight,
there.
no, not tonight, but I'm just saying, I think.
No, I understand. There's a broader question. There's a broader question there, Lou, in that, yes, you always want to be looking at the big picture of the ordinances and the different things. What we have here is a unique scenario that has to sort of follow the path that's in front of it, and it may lead us to make changes. You know, you talk about what we had with the grading being born out of the Karen Arena situation many years ago. That, sometimes what will happen is an event will take place, and that'll drive a new zoning change because of the outcome of the particular event, that you're just not thinking about some of those componentry. So, again, we ran a little long. We want to make sure that we gave you every opportunity. We certainly, as Steve said, we're here what you're saying. We hope we've laid out what the path is for you to sort of deal with the matter. And then she said you're going to get a certified letter, which is, again, that's sort of the formality of it, so that you know that you have a certain number of days that you can appeal, and that goes to the zoning hearing board, and then you're able to make the case, and then they can say, oh, well, okay, in that context, that makes sense. And
Chris, the other thing is that, we, the township, appreciate people that are willing to hold on to 14, 15 acres of land rather than putting 6 or 7 houses on it. And it falls under the definition of ag, and it's a very broad spectrum. When I deal with ag inspectors, the ag inspectors are in charge of inspecting Dorney Park. Now, who would think the ag inspectors would inspect amusement parks, but that's where it falls under. So people say it's not farming, but it falls under the ag industry, and all the regulations fall under the ag industry. All the inspections fall in the ag industry. When you have inflatables, these blow-up things, that falls under the ag industry. Is it farming? I don't know, but that's where it falls under. So it's very broad sometimes.
Okay.
So thank you.
No, I appreciate everyone's feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about everyone, but taking time up. Sorry about that. Thank
It's okay, Chris. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're still on public comment. Does anybody else wish to make public comment to the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward with the official action items on our agenda. First item is our consent agenda. As I ask every month, first and foremost, does any board member wish to make any changes to our consent agenda? Okay, if not, then I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda regarding the treasury report, the bill payments, the February 21st business meeting minutes, and the February 21st work session meeting minutes.
And I'll just add to that, Steve, the payment of the bills is going to be the amount of $410,192.61. Want me to second that? Or do you want to second?
I'll just second it with concerns. I just think that we need to review a lot of these bills, but I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Regarding the bills and those items, I actually wanted to discuss that a little bit in other business when we get to there. And we'll talk about that topic, provided we still have the energy for it. Next up, we're going to have a motion. It's going to be a motion to authorize the appointment of special counsel for the cable franchise agreement renewals. Wendy, do you want to handle this one, or?
Sure, I can give it just a quick overview. This is a proposal from the Cohen Law Group to handle the negotiations of the franchise renewals for Comcast and Verizon. The Cohen Group specializes in this type of work. We've worked with them and several other municipalities that we work with, and we recommend, because this is a specialized area of the law, to engage the Cohen Group to handle this franchise renewal negotiations.
So my understanding, Wendy, is that these guys will, I would say guys, this firm will squeeze, that's the presentation there, the proposal, ultimately they'll squeeze the best value of our agreements with the different cable providers. Well, we want them to negotiate on our behalf the best possible, and they've got sort of the formula baked as well as anybody in terms of how they can do that. Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Have we used them before?
I believe Worcester has used them before. I've definitely, in other municipalities that I work with, I've seen them in Douglas Township, in Royersford Borough, in Schwenksville Borough, and I suspect that you have, in fact, used them. The contracts, run for a period of time, so that may be why you don't recall that. But they sort of have the corner on the market, so to speak.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is, I don't say it's pretty much straightforward, but what are you going to get for our bang for our buck with this? I guess that's for Wendy. What's this special counsel going to, is he going to negotiate more money for Worcester?
They know the ins and outs, frankly, of the cable franchise laws and regulations, and yes, their goal is to get the best franchise fees for the township, and I'm confident that they are able to do that.
Well, how does he know what we want? I mean, I'm just being a little facetious here that we're hiring somebody to go to a meeting and we're going to pay him. I'm sure he's a special person, so he's going to want more money. He's not a person coming out of law school doing this. So how long does he negotiate for, and what's he bring back to the table for Worcester? I mean, I need to be educated on this a little bit, I guess.
It tells you a flat fee.
Yeah,
Flat fee.
yeah,
It is a flat fee.
But-
And they, again, try to get, they have what I would say is expertise in
Okay.
this area that my firm does not have. They, your current, under federal law, the township may assess a franchise fee of up to 5% of the cable company's gross revenues for cable services in the township. The central subject of negotiation with the cable operators is to be, is the specific sources to be included in the definition of gross revenue. The Cohen Law Group has developed a comprehensive list that now includes 27 eligible revenue sources. So again, do believe that they have the expertise and the knowledge to get the township the best results in these negotiations.
right, it goes back to probably 16 years ago, I was in Hershey, and it was a Verizon van there. And every place that people from Lower Providence wanted to go, the Verizon van was on call. And I said to the guys, how do you guys rate to get a Verizon van? He goes, we're going through the process of renegotiating our cable contract right now. So I said, so you guys get a Verizon van to come here to, instead of taking a shuttle buses from place to place, they, I guess, not negotiated it, but that was part of doing the deal for Verizon, really wanted that area. So I guess, once again, Verizon used to have a money man. I should know his name. He was lived in Hatfield, but he went around to the townships, made everything nice for all the townships. Bob, Ron, John, but a lot. It's very interesting what's involved in these franchise agreements. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Seeing what other townships do with it. So,
Yeah.
I guess the question is, we have Verizon for cables and things. Are there any other companies out there we know of that are looking to come into a township? I guess it's much like the trash truck.
Right.
If you have a sole provider of trash, rather than having
Competition.
competition,
Oh, this deals with both Verizon and Comcast.
right?
So those are the two big fish. So what's actually happening in the industry is the streaming services are coming in and eating the lunch of the cable providers.
Right.
So what they're doing, and look, we see it on, so I'm still Xfinity, I'm still paying enough to send somebody's Comcast executive to Harvard based on what I pay in cable services. But invariably they, every time the bill comes out, they've redefined, all the different itemized elements. So what winds up happening is if you just set something on a gross fee, they then redefine it so that it's no longer under the gross fee. They just start getting creative in a way to pay us less. I mean, what they're trying to do is find a way to write the agreement so they pay us less and get creative in how they do that. So, but it's, in some ways, it's found money too,
Yeah.
for as long as that becomes a viable business model.
Yeah, I guess, and certainly she knows the people involved in it, but so many times, Rick, these people doing the negotiating, everybody has their hand in the cookie jar somewhere along the line. It's pay to play. It's just, the state rep, one of our state local reps, he had tickets to everything he wanted
Right.
from one of these cable companies, but he was beholden to the cable companies. And I just want to make sure that, we're looking at all the different options and, the lawyer we have looking at this is doing the right thing for our township.
Right,
So that's it.
fair enough.
We're only given one. We don't have like three
I hear you.
things. So Wendy's recommending that, but what if we don't agree on it? We just say, no, we're not doing it. Then what? Does the contract expire? Like, we have to have a contract with these providers, correct?
Well, it's important that you do because they use the township rights of way.
Yeah, I get it, I get
So
it.
it really is an important,
You have to do
you
it.
get certain things, you get certain services from both of these companies. I do.
So I think what I heard Steve say is that he wants a truck to travel with him when we're going to be at PSATs next month.
You know, part of the problem a number of years ago, there was a certain section of Worcester that didn't get the coverage, the hardwires and the broadband.
So FiOS.
Down in your
FiOS was
area,
trying to get
probably.
into our neighborhood for a while.
It took a long time to get there, and, you know, maybe sometime we should have someone in from one of these companies just to go over what's really happening, servicing the township with the, and they used to do that. Somebody from Verizon or Comcast would, every
Well, you're
number
right.
of years, somebody would show up and explain what was happening.
Well, there was the issue, well, it's completely different, but similar. There was stuff with the water companies several years ago where one of the water companies was trying to maneuver the other water company. I mean, I guess we would certainly want to make sure that we're negotiating fairly with both sides. We're not trying to be Xfinity dominant or Verizon dominant. You know, we want to make sure that we're negotiating good contracts with both, but that we're not trying to be a single provider. You know, we're not trying to say, well, it's only should be Xfinity in Worcester, so therefore, you know, I guess that's, you know, best for the township, but, you know, holistically, we don't want to tell anybody who they should or shouldn't get their internet service from or who they get their cable service from. So,
That's not the point of this.
okay.
And if there's any, you know, specific questions that the board has that you'd like addressed by the law firm, if you want to get those to me, I'm happy to send them off, and
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get answers that are, that'll, you know, address any of your concerns.
Fair enough. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, you're the motion guy tonight.
Authorize the appointment of special counsel for the cable franchise agreement renewal.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding a motion on the floor? Bob?
Oh, no, we're in trouble now.
Bob Andorn, Worcester. Since the only information we have is just that you want to make a motion to hire them, I'm just a simple dollars and cents kind of guy. Like, how much are you going to pay this council, and how much do you intend to receive? I mean, it doesn't make sense to hire somebody for $1,000 if you're going to receive $500, but if you're going to pay them $1,000 and they're going to achieve $10,000, that might make sense. But I don't have any information that I can understand what that is. And at the same time, do you need to hire somebody for $1,000 if you can negotiate for the same thing that they're doing? I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just saying I don't have any information. I'm curious. What are the dollars and cents that are involved?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, Rick, but it's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that'd be the revenue that the township would be receiving? $17,000 to pay to the Cone Group? And how much can the township potentially receive?
So this contract period would cover 5 years' worth of contracts for Comcast and Verizon. I don't know the figure offhand, but between Comcast and Verizon, it's probably a six-figure sum for our franchise fee annually. Yeah, could you take a look?
So I can't talk about the data for this particularly, but I worked over in Warrington Township.
I meant, could you look it up on Edmunds?
Oh, yes.
See what our,
Sure. Not now, though.
yeah. Yeah, we can look up what the past revenue has been. So what they're going to be negotiating is basically the formula for how Comcast and Verizon is going to pay the township fees, for accessing our right-of-way. So what sort of things will get paid for, as a part of the service over the next 5 years. Cohen, as Wendy was stating, has some expertise and experience in this particular area, but what is going to be received is not known. It's going to work on a formula based on numbers of users, which we expect to decrease as people cut the cord. So we can get you numbers for past years. We could only forecast what future years would be.
Fair enough. At the same time, you're going to pass a motion that gives the Cohen Group 17 grand, and I don't have any information. I mean, if you told me, here's what it was, and I can't predict what it's going to be, but that's, you know, that's a basis that you could at least use as, I mean, I'm hearing Sean say, you know, 6 figures. I don't know if that's accurate. Is that 6 figures per annum or 6 figures over that same 5-year contract? I'm trying to make dollars and cents if it makes sense for you guys to hire these people. If they're providing value for you, I would be all for it. If they're not providing value or minimal value that you could probably achieve, especially given that in the context that this streaming is going to, and I can speak to that specifically because I've just dropped my
Are you a
cable.
cord cutter? Had you cut the cord?
I cut the cord.
Fair enough.
And am saving hundreds of dollars a month. So, and we didn't have half the service that I have. I now have 6,000 channels, access to 15,000 movies, more than I'll ever need or use. And so, I never watched 3 before. I happen to watch them now just because they're accessible. But I'm just saying, I never got to that point, and I'm just trying to understand. I don't have a value understanding as to whether this makes any sense at all. So I can tell you that $17,000 for a consultant seems excessive. But if they're providing value for you, then
Right.
I would think that that is accessible. But again, without even any comparison from years past, decade past, years past. So
It's a nice sum of money the township gets from it. I was surprised. I should know the number, but we're making it all right. I mean, it's just, as she said, Wendy said, that you need someone's experience in negotiating, much like when you call Verizon and you say, I'm going to go to Comcast. Well, they start opening I'll give you this and I'll give you that, and let's look at your channel things, and you end up paying half the bill, and you're getting a lot more with it. So I think that's why we use the expert, that they've been through this rodeo before working with Verizon. I guess my question why I brought it up was, I hope they operate in good faith, that they're not selling us short. How do you know that? And without knowing all the intricacies.
It is across 5 years, we might find on the back end of that it's, I mean, we're comfortable that the benefit will be far greater than
Greater than, right.
17,000, but it may not be as good as it was the last 5 years, certainly.
I understand that you can't predict the future. In terms of requesting more information, and you've seen me in the last 4 months, and I'll come up again later on. In this particular case, I would say what would be helpful is to do your homework, to understand so that you could present that information, have the facts available,
Make a
on,
comparison.
and so that people can comment intelligently on, this is what it was, this is how much they charged, this was our net investment. They're asking for this net investment. We won't know what the revenues will be, but if it's comparable, we're going to expect that. I mean, if it's 100,000, you're talking about 17% given to a consultant to negotiate on that. I have no frame of reference if that's good or bad, but without that information, I'm stuck.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
But Bob, just remember when you pay your cable fee, we are getting some of that money that you give to Verizon. Part of that thing is going to the township.
$1.25 would be.
Okay. Fair enough. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Make sure I haven't lost my place here. All right, so
That, Wendy?
There we go. So we got another motion, so,
Table.
yep. Okay. Yep. Fair enough. Do we need to do any action, or we just move past it? Okay. Okay. And just extending on that one step further, as I recall from our discussion, the color coding is to give them information regarding the water main to that particular hydrant, correct? So that they know what is accessible in fire situations, correct? Okay. Gotcha. Fair enough. Does anybody have any specific questions regarding this ordinance? As you might recall, we discussed it last month at the February meeting.
Nope.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance 24-297, amending the chapter 41 Township Code, fire hydrant coding.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have other business. I actually have two items I'd like to briefly discuss with other business. The first is pertaining to the bills of the township. I want to just kind of informationally, Lou, share a little more. I know you had raised that issue at our meeting last month in terms of, so we certainly can take a look at the best way to make sure that we're getting the information that you want to see regarding any particular vendor, any particular bill. So we have a cadence presently. I'll just share what we do presently, and then we can look to see if there's changes that make any sense going forward, is that we cut checks at presently 3 different intervals in the month, and it's based on the cadence of paying our vendors and the cycle of how we pay our vendors so that things are on time. And then presently, the chairman goes in, and that's me, and signs the checks 3 times a month. Any one of us can go in and sign checks. I know you've signed them in the past. I know Steve signed them in the past as well. We've just, for simplicity, left that with the chairman, but ultimately, it can be anybody. We have 2 individuals that sign every check that goes out, and all the detail is then associated with the check runs that we do with those 3 times during the month. With the cadence we do with our ultimately what we get in our packet at this meeting is that we're pulling together and the township is working through the process of all of the bills every month. They're coding to the different cycles. They're going to whether that's being part of a general fund expense, a capital fund expense, or a sewer fund expense. There's 3 different colored checks. And all of that process happens all throughout the month. What we're ultimately doing in this meeting is just, they've already approved all of the bills, and then we're approving to pay them. And saying our step is sort of just the procedural step of saying it's okay to pay the people, and we need to do that every month. We're required, second-class township code, that we're following the law that we need to, if we don't take that step, they can't pay the different people. But if there's, so you had asked, is there a way to get us information sooner, like where we could have it in front of there? The short answer is yes, but not exactly by saying we just change a date on something. Ultimately, the run that takes place today happens specifically to our meeting date. Like everything is run based on through the meeting date. So if we do it on Friday, then we throw the cycle off, just as an example in terms of that. So I don't know that that works. I don't know that we can just adjust the date on that. But ultimately, the bills are always available. The data is always available to us. And certainly, we can share the information during the month, but the big one is today. Like most of the checks, in this case, I signed them yesterday because Nicole was going on vacation today. But typically, we're signing those checks on meeting day for probably, I don't know the exact percentage. On the 3 check runs, the one today is typically the largest one. So certainly, we can share the information from the check runs in the other parts of the month. But I don't know that that's going to give you the meat, like the bulk of what happens with this one. So I don't know the perfect way to handle that, but we certainly always can make that information. Like, again, I'm not preventing you from getting any of those details at any point. And if any vendor, there's ever a question on a vendor, when you're there doing the check, when you're actually signing the checks, and you both have done this, if you see a check that doesn't make sense, or when you're reviewing it against the backup, if the amount seems off, or if it's higher than usual, I mean, you get to the cadence of what most of the bills are, you question it. You'll pull it out and say, hey, why are we paying this individual, or why is this amount is higher than normal? Is there a reason for that? We see that in solicitor bill, and again, we won't pick on Wendy or John tonight, but in the case of
Baby bounce party? Just curious.
that's for the Worcester Day.
Gotcha.
Worcester Day later this year. So we had a check for $2,000 that went out to them in terms of that. But that's a good example. That's an outlier, and a good example of an outlier on those. I won't have again, I do it. I don't know that I would have the answer on every check, on every one that I remember, at night when I signed earlier in the day. But when we're going through them, those are ones that I would pull out to make sure what they are and whether they make sense. And then if there's one that doesn't, we'll pull it and
It would be nice to just get them ahead of time so I can have more than 5 minutes. That's all. I don't know if we can do that. But.
No, I understand the ask. One of the things we talked about, we being me, Sean, and Nicole, when I was signing the checks last week, I said, hey, is there a way? And we certainly conceivably, when she does the run earlier in the day, is that she can get them emailed out earlier in the day, potentially, but we can't necessarily shift the day, I guess is what, but potentially getting them earlier in the day to you is certainly an option that we talked about, and certainly I don't have any qualms about. Again, I'd be happy to have you go in and sign the checks as well.
Let's try.
So, does that make sense?
I'm very satisfied with that answer.
Okay. And then the other item is it's more of an informational item that BET, I don't know the way to answer. I don't know the way to deal with this one. I just want to share an experience I had and some of the concerns it ultimately brings for me, and we've talked about this a little bit. So I'm on Nextdoor, which is one of the local applications that somebody posted something that the apartments are coming. Again, a paraphrase, whatever it was. And in the blink of an eye, there were 65 or 70 comments, and there were a few attributes to those comments that were concerning to me. And I'll abbreviate, I apologize for being long-winded on it. Most of them weren't from Worcester. So that was the first thing, is most of the people that were choosing to comment weren't from Worcester. Overwhelmingly, the information was wrong, in terms of what was going there. And so it was going to be, and one person had the wrong number of units, one person said it was going to be low-income housing, one person, and you'd get the whole rabbit hole of, and I sat there and I said, one of the things we want to be able to do informationally is share. So some people were making comments that the EPA had shut that facility down, so how is it possible that anything was even being built? Well, the EPA doesn't govern that. It's the DEP. It's not even the right, but that's what you get. So what it got me saying is just, and we've talked about it a little bit, is just, how do we get in front of something like that so that we can share that there was an extensive process of environmental steps that they had to take to get to this point, and there'll be additional environmental steps when it ultimately comes before our board. So we haven't even seen the plans yet. We know they've come in, it's going to our planning commission. Is that this month, Sean, or next month? Right, so it's finally, there's a plan that's coming before our planning commission, and it'll go through the different steps that go with that, and then eventually it will get to this board for a conversation of an approval somewhere down the line. But, clearly what's out there isn't accurate, it isn't complete, it sort of, and just, I'm more informationally saying, hey, is there a better way that we can make sure that we're communicating on that particular topic? We've certainly had some people have come into this meeting, expressed some concerns about environmental issues and those sorts of things. And again, I don't have an answer for it. I just wanted to bring it up in other business just as something for us to consider, and if there's a better way for us to be communicating on that particular project, just because there has been a lot of question about it. And we don't have a project like that every day.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what you're saying, and I guess a lot of developments we have a handle on. This is something new to Worcester, this multi-unit thing. We're dealing with a builder that we just got some information. It goes back 3-4 years ago when a certain gentleman showed up at our meeting and made a lot of accusations against a certain builder. And now looking at what's happening, it's now on the state level and on the federal level to some extent. And
right.
I'm familiar with someone from another township doing business with a builder that sometimes a lot of questions are raised. And I think it's really imperative that we, Worcester, stay on top of that building project over there. They're building them all over the place.
Right.
And we have to be very careful that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and they're following all the regulations that we, the township, want. And I know there's constraints to things we can do, and we have to live within the letter of the law, but at the same time, I think we have to be very strict with them when we interpret the zoning laws and the things as far as traffic and paving. And it goes back, once again, to the fence going up. That was a real stickler there, and I know John said it went up. Well, first of all, they tore 2 buildings down before the fence went up. They tore the tanks out of the ground without the fence going up. And there wasn't, we have 2 people in this township that are in the environmental gasoline business, and both called it to my attention that if they would take a tank out of the ground without it being capped, $25,000 fee from DEP. And what we let those fellows get away with over there, I was there and I saw the tanks coming out of the ground with some solution leaking out of the tanks. Was it fuel? Was it water? I have no idea, but something was leaking out of it, and it surely smelled in the neighborhood. And I think they got away with something over there. I just don't know what they got away with, but they got away with something. It's just, it was wrong what they did, how they did it. The track co was there pulling this stuff out within 5 feet of traffic without any kind of fencing, material, signage, or the tanks themselves being pulled out. I know the fellow went over there, approached him, not on his property, on the Germantown Pike, just questioned him about it. Well, we had a guy come out and, look at it, but from talking to professional people that sat at the intersection, involved in the business of tank remediation, it wasn't done properly. And I think Worcester, people have videos of it, and it's just, I don't want to say a black eye, but I think we were caught sleeping at the wheel with that.
Concerning.
Concerning, thank you.
Right.
That company has enough money to do things right. And, they all look to hire contractors for a certain price to circumvent the system, and I think the system was certainly circumvented in that situation. And as Lou said, thank you, concerning. And as this building gets built, or if it ever gets built, I think we have to be very concerned that they're doing things right. That's it, thank you.
Fair enough. Does anybody else have any other business they wish to?
Two things.
Okay.
Fix the clock. Turn up the heat next time. That's all. Any public, are we done public comment? Done.
We're not done.
We got public comment.
We were in other business, we're now to public comment. So does anybody, so Deb and Bob, you can go in whatever order works for you.
Ladies first.
All right.
Fix the clock, turn the heat.
Got it.
Deb
All right.
Walker, Worcester. I saw something similar that you're talking about, Rick, with the gas station at the corner of 73 and 363. And I don't know if this would work. I mean, it may be worth trying. I don't know. But the owner of the gas station actually replied. Well, okay, back it up. The situation was some people got gas at the gas station.
Yep.
It's known for being really inexpensive and very convenient. And a bunch of their cars end up like just stopping dead in the street. And as
They
it
had a
turned
water
out, the
issue, yep.
tanks were, yeah, they had gotten a ton of water in them. So of course, there's all these people like, oh, they don't take care of stuff. And like you said, rumors galore. But the owner actually went on the site and said, I am the owner. This is what happened. If our insurance is covering your damages. And I didn't see a whole lot after that. So would it help if you said, I'm a township supervisor and here's what happened?
So I contemplated long and hard. So I am very, very careful to post anything.
Yeah.
Because as you see, I am occasionally more verbose.
Exactly.
And I want to make sure, it's hard to do it in a snippet. The hardest thing is to share because the totality of information that's needed to correct is significant. But I did debate saying, hey, would love for you, if you're concerned, contact the township. And that's certainly, it's a path to take, but also wanted to make sure I sort of brought it up in this meeting before all of a sudden the phone started ringing and
Right.
somebody said, oh, that supervisor guy said that just stop by the office and you'd clear your calendar to discuss
Exactly.
things. I wanted to be careful with that, but it's definitely, I consider it and I debate with it, but I've just seen, it's such a challenge because you see how it degrades so rapidly and all of a sudden it's.
And then you get all
And that's just the nature of social media. So it's a good medium in some ways, but certainly it's hard to discuss those types of issues. But
So it's a thought.
it's a thought. I appreciate the comments. Thanks, Deb. And Bob?
Bob Andor in Worcester. So I have raised the issue before regarding the passage of the 2024 budget. And I apologize that this is now into March, but it will continue to go on until I get the correct answer. So my biggest concern was that you guys passed a budget and didn't have the proper information in front of you. And so I had to file a right to know. And from the information that was presented to me, you did not have the right information. The three of you were provided, I can only find from the information that was presented to me, that you were only provided budget information on a single time, single instance in September And when I looked at that information, it has changed in some cases dramatically, specifically regarding the sewer fund. Others, minor numbers. I would expect those numbers would have continued to change as the budget was being developed. But I was never presented, or I wasn't presented with any additional information that you ever had the correct 2024 budget. And the day that you passed it, I'm on record of saying what you have is not the 2024 budget. We verified the information that you had and the information that I had and I was looking at. So I just want to go on record to say I'm not done yet. I'm in consultation, trying to find out what the township was obligated to provide to you, and how do I go about finding out what obligation, duty, responsibility the three of you had to verify that that information was accurate and correct. You can't verify it because you didn't have it. And I still remain tremendously concerned that you've passed a budget that you did not physically look at, see, or respond to. May have been presented at some point in time, but you didn't physically have those documents in front of you. Specifically at the time that you passed the budget, and according to the information that was forwarded to me, you never had it. You should be concerned about that. Very concerned. And I have every intention of pursuing it to whatever level I can to understand if there's culpability and to what extent. It has to do with responsibility, and I want, ultimately, I think the buck stops with you, not specifically you, but the three of you, and I'm not quite sure that you've lived up to your responsibility.
Bob, because you said it, I'll ask a follow-up question. You said in consultation. Well, where are you getting the information from? You did say consultation, didn't you? You're in consultation?
I am in the process of consulting with somebody as to what I should do and understanding the correct, what the responsibility of this board is, and if they did not live up to their duties and responsibilities. Okay.
Just so we're clear, the information was there back on the desk, and there was some conversation about it was outdated and stuff like that. I thought that you had talked to Sean and went back and forth, and the proper information was given to you, or you're saying that's still not right?
No, I filed a right to know, and the information that was presented to me would, in theory, be everything that I asked for. My request was very general. I wanted every document, including the backup that was presented from any township employee to the Board of Supervisors, specifically regarding the 2024 budget. And I was forwarded information, 26 documents, I believe, and I looked through each and every one of those documents and then looked at the attachments accordingly and could find no corroborating evidence, documentation that you were provided with the budget. So I have two pieces of that. One is, did you get what you were supposed to get? And I can't seem to find that that was the case. But then more importantly, or just as importantly, did you guys review it, which you couldn't have because the day you were passing it, I brought up and told you that you were approving something that you didn't have in fact in front of you.
So there's two parts. So in terms of a right to know request, so here, this packet we have right here. So every month, it's here. It has all the information in it, and then it gets taken and it gets disseminated. There is no public record. So what you don't get or wouldn't have gotten in a right to know request is that in September, October, November, and December, the information was presented in our packet to the board. In November, so the information that you had in the back in November, that when we had the discussion, you had information from November. In December, we found, hey, wait a minute, what we had in here in December didn't match up to what you had that had been on the table from November. What we had in November matched what was on the back of the table in our packet. But there wouldn't be, and I don't know what you were provided specifically in terms of a right to know, but you wouldn't have gotten what was in this packet because there is no public record of it. It wasn't sent to us via an electronic means. It wasn't mailed to us. It wasn't delivered to us. It was provided for us in the meeting. So I don't know if we even have a means to, I don't know that we have a means to reproduce that. First, I hear everything you're saying, and I respect anything that you feel you need to continue to do, but ultimately, we did have it in our information. In December, what we had was what was in there didn't match was what was from November that was still sitting on the back table. That's correct, and I don't want to.
So are you trying to suggest that you had the correct information in December?
No, that's not what I'm saying, because we then pulled it up we pulled it up.
Which was incorrect. Which was incorrect, because I left here in that meeting with the directive that what was on the website was the 2024 budget. I went and printed it off. It's the 2023, it's a work in progress. It's not the 2024 budget. So how would I be able to print that off if it was the accurate information? I would only have that. How would I ever have gotten that work in process document? I wouldn't. So the document and I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I mean,
but if
I hear what you're saying.
The document that you're given, so today you have a document in front of you. I don't know what's in that document, albeit understand that as part of the right to know information, you can look through and see where allegedly, internally, one person would say to another, here's budget information to include in the packet. So
Okay. So,
again, allegedly, that would be, part of that, but those documents were not being, they weren't current, they weren't up to date, that what we were bidding on or approving. But the document that you currently have in front of you, you never saw before today, correct? You walked in and here's a budget package or what you're doing, and at the end of this meeting, that goes back. You don't take that with you.
we do not take this with us. That is
Right.
correct.
So if you're somehow suggesting that...
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not trying to suggest anything. I'm trying to share information. But go ahead. I don't.
Yeah, no. No, it's probably better that I reframe it. You guys were given a budget, supposedly, you're saying in November you had the right information and that went away. So you looked at a $5 million budget while you were conducting the meeting. It wasn't presented. I've watched the videos. It was never presented, and that information went away. And you somehow absorbed a $5 million budget and then never had it to have with you to look at again, and then approved it a month later. You're a lot better than I am. I would need to look at that and study it and understand it. Just even the process of what I've been doing, trying to understand this. The numbers change so, in some cases, by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my next course of review is going to be try to understand some of the sewer budget information. It's complex. It takes a lot of, at least my brain energy, to try and figure that out. And so if you could, literally while you're conducting this meeting, look at the budget, it's all good, everything's where it needs to be, and not have that to mark it up, whatever, kudos to you. You're certainly a lot better at it than I am. I would need to, and I'm not trying to be facetious, I'm concerned that you didn't have the right information, that you didn't have an opportunity to review it. And if you didn't do that, I'm concerned that I'm not sure you're doing the job that we've hired you to do. Collectively, this is not addressed to you, it's addressed to this board.
Well, Bob, I think once again, the budget really start in September, October, we're working on that. And I think November, we've hashed it out, we've looked at it. And come to December meeting, it's really just a thing of passing it. The numbers are already looked at. But I believe the numbers, one of the questions you had at that meeting was something to do regarding the interest or where some of the money was coming from. And I believe I said, or somebody else said, well, it's really a guesstimate. There's no exact number that's there even the night of the budget. It's sort of, it's a work in progress. And I think that was your bugaboo that night was over how some of these numbers came. And I think the question was, we see it as projection. It's not something that we're spending. It's more of the income coming in. If I remember our follow-up conversation in the January meeting, then Rick, it alluded to that. So as you said, the numbers are never locked in. It's sort of, it's not floating, but that's how we voted on the budget. There's some things that we generally understand that may change, the course of the end of the year. We're voting on it in December. Now, when we do our QuickBooks and things at the farm, we close it out the end of December. December 31st, everything in or out. It changes then, in that month period leading up to it. I think that's where some of the questions coming with you, they weren't exact numbers.
I don't want to, I feel like you're convoluting two particular issues. When you approve a budget, those budget numbers never change. If you ever change them, you have a problem.
Right.
The budget you determine, right, wrong, or indifferent, here's our budget, here's what we intend to live with. The monitoring of that budget, those numbers fluctuate daily, hourly, and you're monitoring and working towards those particular items. Unfortunately, the way the budget process happened, when I first looked at it and raised the issue, you are correct, I raised the issue on interest income and was raising a specific disparity, significant disparity, and was trying to get that information. If you go back and watch the video, specifically the issue is, you guys got it wrong, because I was saying you initially showed achieving $200,000 in 2022. This is interest income. And we're projecting only $12,000 in 2023, and did not have the 2024 numbers. That was part of the issue. And I was trying to understand what that disparity was. And then the actual year-to-date for 2023 was $780,000. I misspoke. The 2024 number was then a projection there even beyond that. So you guys had a conversation. You said, no, we way underestimate. We're very conservative in how we approach those particular numbers. And I said, well, you're not conservative because you're already projecting that you're going to achieve even more than you have to date for 2023, even though the initial, when the budget was presented, I was not here for that presentation. If I was, in 2023, I would have raised the issue. How could you have $200,000 in interest income in 2022, say you're only going to get 15 or 12,000, I don't remember the number, 12 or 15,000 in 2023, and my comment in general was, the money that you're receiving the interest income on has not gone down, and the interest rates have not gone down. Not that you can't project or, so that would be tremendously conservative. Say, I'm only going to achieve 5% of what we had last year. And then you tell me that, and then we achieved hundreds of percent, even greater than that. And then part of that was a discussion where you said, oh, no, we're very conservative how we do that. And I said, well, you're not conservative. You then go from 780,000 to close to $1 million. It's just, I'm trying to understand how that goes about. I mean, if you're going to achieve $1 million in interest, then you should project that you're going to achieve that, or 950,000, or 925 might be the conservative estimate from that. That's what triggered my initial comment regarding the budget, but then that led to this whole discussion, because what I was looking at, you didn't have. And that's when we determined that you were looking at the wrong document. And so here we are. I'm not convinced that you have the right thing. And if you want to hang your hat on, we did have it, and we had it for one particular meeting, and then we gave it back in, I need to kind of try to evaluate whether that's even practical and reasonable.
Right. I guess as Rick alluded to earlier, in our booklet here, we have a statement of revenue and expenditures we get on a monthly basis. So it's not, we get to the end of the year, we're not sitting there, as you mentioned, dwelling on the numbers. We see them on a monthly basis. I'm looking at snow plowing last year versus this year. All these things are given on a monthly basis, so we're tracking it. We look at the engineering fees, we look at the lawyers' fees, where they're at. So it's not something, it's a culmination of a year-long event. And when you get to the budget, where we, from the township staff that prepares it, runs the numbers, and it's just an overview of us to see where we're at. We certainly know that, our legal fees may be a lot higher this year than maybe what it was budgeted. We have a bunch of ongoing problems with the township that the legal staff is more involved in it. It tells us, the right to know, that we can see that there's been no money spent on right to know, that it's there for us to look at. All the fuels are listed, all the management things are all listed there to see where we have a guide of where we're going. And as it goes along in the month, we're checking to see if we're over or under, did we really underestimate it, overestimate it? What do we do wrong? Where the management of the township, we're part of the management of it, where do we guess this wrong? So I understand your concern looking at it, but I think the question that maybe got a little touchy there was that we just sat there in one meeting deciding on a $5 million budget, as you said, that it's just a process to lose concern that he's concerned about the bills, because he's looking at the bills coming in and what's involved in that. So I think that he's doing his due diligence. He's asking these questions about some of these things, that it's not something we're waiting to the end of the year. He's not waiting to the year. He has concerns now. So I think it's a work in progress as we go along. During the course of the year, we try to have an understanding of where we're at. And I once again, to your comment, which is right, it was sort of, the budget's the budget at the end of the year. The numbers don't change. But I think some of these things, as far as where the interest is, and some of these things are coming in, when it's prepared maybe a little earlier, and it's more of a projection. I shouldn't speak for Sean. It's more of a projection where he thinks it's going to end up. So, and I guess the question, are we trusting the staff to do that? So, I understand your point. I think that point's well taken. I understand your concern. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board this evening? Bert.
I'll make this very brief. And it's actually not a comment, it's a question. I just need a clarification. On tonight's agenda, at the very bottom, there are two upcoming meetings, and I think they're potentially high-interest meetings, Zoning Board and the Planning Commission for next week. And the one is at 5:30, the other's at 7, but at the bottom, there's an asterisk saying the meetings will be held at the Township Building, but it doesn't seem to refer to anything. My question is, where are the meetings going to be? And are the times true?
The times are correct. The zoning hearing board is meeting at 5:30 that evening, but yeah, I see the meeting thing at the bottom. we can update that. The meetings will be here at the community meeting hall.
All I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'm glad we could answer a question. Seeing no additional public comment, then I motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.